Greetings and salutations! Family trees, noble houses, royal lines, these are the die-hard tropes of fiction, especially fantasy, and with good reason. Family trees are plot and world-building gold. For example, family ties can create conflict, obligation, and they can bind characters together. Family relationships can define, who gets the inheritance, the throne, or anything else. And secrets lurking in family trees, like secret siblings, illegitimate children, forgotten curses. These can be incredible plot points. And if that's not enough, hereditary factors like appearance, conditions, and magic can also pass down family trees. I'm Janet from World Anvil, which I probably should have mentioned earlier, and in this video, I'm going to be going through 3 of my favourite examples of amazing family trees from history, because I'm a big old nerd. The Medicis, the Habsburgs, and Charlemagne, all to inspire you guys for world-building family trees that are cooler and more original and awesome for your plots. You ready? It's time to light up the forge. Family number 1, the Medici family. Power equals money, plus industrial strength and nepotism. Oh yeah. So some of you have probably already heard of the Medicis. After all, they are, the star of their own TV show, actually more than one. And they were a massively prominent banking family, and more, in Renaissance Italy. Through political marriages, including those with royal families, through some pretty, as I said, industrial strength nepotism, and alliances with powerful guilds, they grew into a vastly powerful family. The Medici counted archdukes and popes and princesses among their number, and they dominated their city's government, and governments across various city-states in Italy, what we now call Italy. And they were, for a time, the richest family in Europe. And if that's not enough, several of their members, including Alessandro de' Medici, first Duke of Florence, Alessandro de' Medici, I'm trying, people, were considered important enough and troublesome enough to be assassinated. I can't include every single detail that is cool about the Medicis because this video would be an hour long and I wouldn't talk about anything else. But if you are looking for inspiration when building family trees, I can recommend reading more about the Medicis. It's not all arranged marriages and assassinations either. Because of their vast wealth, they became responsible for a flourishing of art and ideas. And they, further spurred on the Renaissance. They were patrons of Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Machiavelli, and Galileo. And they have one hell of a family tree. Plus, their family motto, which is Festina Lente. Now that means make haste slowly, and in my opinion, it's a pretty good world-building motto to live by. So let's talk about what we can learn from the Medici family about world-building family trees. Families like the Medici family got into power early, and they did everything they could to stay there. They used guilds, nations, key positions in organised religion, and marriage with other powerful families in order to cement that position. And it worked. The Medici are quite reminiscent of a lot of the Game of Thrones style noble houses. If you're world-building family trees in that style, think Lannisters and Targaryens, the Medici family offers a great lesson. Remember that the key to their success was their widespread power base. They recruited and promoted their family members to powerful positions in order to further the aims of the family, not just in Italy, but across Europe. And their methods weren't completely clean. Remember that too. Inspirational world-building family tree number 2 is the Habsburgs. An ignoble end to a family tree. The House of Habsburg was founded by Radbot, which is an amazing name, maybe my new favourite name, in the 11th century. And the dynasty takes its name from Habsburg Castle in modern-day Switzerland. Gradually, the house grew in power through the medieval period and into the Renaissance. One of the cool things about the Habsburgs, if you consider them as a family organisation from a world-building perspective, is where they succeeded, but especially what their weaknesses were. It's very easy to create family trees and family organisations that have only strengths and no weaknesses. So let's talk about this for a second. For example, the Habsburg members were fragmented into multiple ethnicities, particularly in the later period into the Spanish branch and the German branch, and they had a terrible time communicating with each other. They also had notoriously unstable finances, their industrial base was thin and they never really invested in that area enough, and the naval resources were also really minimal. And yet, they were one of the most powerful families in Europe for centuries. Now, how powerful is powerful? Well, listen, Habsburg continuously held the throne of the Holy Roman Empire from 1438 until the extinction of the male line in 1740. If that's not power, I don't know what is. So what happened to the Habsburgs? On paper, they're this super powerful family, and by 1700, they owned most of freaking Europe. But despite that power, or perhaps because of it, you could say, pun intended, the Habsburgs sowed the seeds of their own destruction. So what did they do? Whilst trying to consolidate their power, well, there's no delicate way to say this, they inbred, like a lot. Mainly this was nieces marrying uncles, and first cousins marrying one another. And gradually, the Habsburg facial characteristics became so extreme and so deformed that they were widely recognisable and really not very attractive. Of course, there was more problems than just the fact that they were unattractive. If you're curious to see what this looks like, then you can check out some of the later members of the Habsburg dynasty in their portraits. Their common deformities included the Habsburg jaw, which was a vastly enlarged lower jaw. It made them difficult for them to drink or even close their mouth properly. Also the Habsburg nose, which was a very large nose with a hump and a hanging tip. And finally, the Habsburg lip, a protruding and extended lower lip, which again kind of interfered with some of the eating and drinking neatly processes. This is criticised in contemporary reports in court, for example. Here's one very clear example. This is Charles II of Spain, who's displaying these classic Habsburg features. If you're world building family trees, then an inbred condition like the Habsburg jaw can make a very memorable feature and a great show don't tell. But this kind of inbreeding had more than just aesthetic problems. It's been shown by studies from the University of Santiago de Compostela that the Habsburgs' eventual extinction really was a result of this inbreeding. The marriages led to a significant rise in the chances of miscarriage and stillbirth. So, of course, childbirth in the 18th century was already dangerous, but the survival rate of the Habsburg children to the age of 10 was like 50%. That's well below the standard, which was about 80% from the same time and the same place. The final male heir, Charles II, who I just showed you earlier, is physically incapable of producing children after centuries of inbreeding. So what can we learn from the Habsburgs about world building our own family trees? If you're world building a noble family who's done a lot of inbreeding, consider the impact that's going to have on the way that family members look and function. Remember that fertility, appearance, and even sanity can be affected by inbreeding. And it can also cause massive increase in hereditary diseases like haemophilia, Huntington's chorea, and other conditions. Depending on how you want to tone your family, this can be a great world building and writing device, and it's certainly memorable. George R.R. Martin used this with great effect in the Game of Thrones series, and it definitely casts a very interesting shadow on the Targaryen line. World building family tree number 3 for your consideration is Charlemagne. World building family trees from the bottom to the top. Okay, so Charlemagne, his name basically means Charles the Great, this Charlemagne stuff, lived in 748 to 814, and he was mind-blowing. He united huge swathes of Europe after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, which happened 3 centuries earlier. He founded the Carolingian Empire, which included Franks. They're a Germanic tribe occupying what is now Belgium, the Netherlands, France, Luxembourg, and Western Germany. The Lombards, who are later Northern Italians from Lombardy, and the Romans. You know, they're from Rome. Charlemagne was also the creator of the Holy Roman Empire, which we've talked about previously, and that would continue in various forms, causing various fights and issues up until the 19th century. If you want to learn more about Charlemagne himself, I can recommend a video which I've linked in the description. It's very, very good, has some world-building gold in it, and to say that Charlemagne was an important man in history would be like saying that chips are delicious. It doesn't do it justice. But let's talk about why his family tree is cool. So on the face of it, it looks pretty bland, right? Charlemagne married at least 4 times. From those unions, he had 3 legitimate kids who survived into adulthood. Sorry, sons, I should say. Sons. Daughters were not particularly important to this era, and that sucks. So, interestingly, it was his youngest son, Louis the Pious, who succeeded him. But what makes Charlemagne really interesting when world-building family trees is his legacy and this whole, mythos that he left behind him. As the successor to the Roman Empire, as many saw him, Charlemagne was imagined to be a fount of this new strain of royalness. And after his death, it got even crazier. Charlemagne became a figure of legendary status, like King Arthur, for example. And by the 12th century, he had miracles attributed to him, and he was canonized as a saint by the Catholic Church. In songs and in poems, he is described as this, champion of Christendom, a great political leader, an invincible warrior, a chivalrous knight, a martyr, wore great underpants. If there was a good thing to say about anybody, it was said about Charlemagne. And so, medieval rulers from across Europe went out of their way to prove that they were related to Charlemagne. And this was to reinforce their own legitimacy and their legacy. These kinds of rulers include Otto the Great, all of those King Louis on the French throne, William the Conqueror, and eventually the House of Plantagenet, which ruled England. And then there was that whole War of the Roses thing. We're not going to talk about that right now. So if you have a legendary figure in the history of your world, you might find that people currently in power are trying to associate themselves with that legend. Now, world-building a family tree, whether it's actually fact or slightly fictionalized, would be a great way that they could display that. And this wasn't only limited to Charlemagne. Another great example of this is the West Saxon kings, who included Woden, like the actual Norse god Odin, Woden, in their family tree. So this kind of behavior might not just apply to figures from history, but figures from folklore and from myth as well. Of course, if you are world-building family trees, then World Anvil's new family trees are, the best way to keep track of them. They're so easy to use because they auto-generate based off the information you've put in your characters, plus they integrate beautifully with your character profiles and with your world. It's what we're all about. It's knitting everything together, helping you find things. So if you want to check out this one that I'm showing you right now, I've dropped the link in the description. So guys, what kind of family tree are you world-building? Is it a complex political powerhouse in its prime, like the Medici family? Is it a new royal family desperate to prove their connection to past greatness, like Charlemagne? Or maybe you're creating the last dwindling dregs of a once great house, brought low by a Habsburgian style inbreeding. Let me know in the comments below. Let me know if you have more inspiration of this kind, more families that you think are cool that you would like me to do a video about. And don't forget to like this video if it inspired you or if it made you think. To get more World Anvil news and world building tips, subscribe to our channel and click the bell, ding, so you don't miss a video. Now grab your hammer and go world build!